Should Mick Schumacher be promoted up to Formula One in 2021? This is a real big discussion point now, especially off the back of the F2 results at the Tuscan Grand Prix last weekend. I've kind of gone through swings and roundabouts with my opinion on this, so I'm basically just going to talk through my thought processes, kind of give my 2 cents, and if you agree or disagree, that's cool. I've kind of gone through swings and roundabouts with my opinion on this, and my opinion today is different to what it was 3 weeks ago, and the results of the Tuscan Grand Prix have kind of swayed that a little bit. So just thought I'd come in and give my 2 cents on this and kind of talk about F2 for a bit, because what a season that's been so far. We got a real good pool of talent in Formula 2 this season, and I think that's one of the things that slightly concerns me about the Mick Schumacher conversation, and we'll get to that in a moment. But drivers like Callum Eilert, Robert Schwartzman, Yuki Tsunoda's been doing quite well. Nikita Mazepin's quite a good driver. There's a good handful of them. Some of them are having great seasons, some of them not so much. Another thing that's alarming is there really aren't very many seats in Formula One at the moment. Moving into next year, probably into the year after that as well, because this is the re-sign year, if you will. So this is where a lot of multi-season contracts get signed. I don't think much will change next year in the silly season seat swapping conundrum. Wow, that was a mouthful. Schumacher did very well to start. He's been very consistent, is something I will definitely say. I think early on in the season as well, he did make some rookie mistakes, kind of cracked under the pressure a little bit, which instantly made me think, okay, he needs some time. He needs to learn a little bit more the way this all works and get more used to it, and a little bit more dealing with the pressure, because obviously when you got to Formula One, the pressure will increase, especially with the surname like Schumacher. So at the start of the season, I very much thought, no, that he's not looking like he's going to win it anyway. Give him another season in Prima, let him really round himself out, let one of the other young drivers who are doing really well go up next year, and then kind of work it from there. However, in recent weekends, Schumacher's really come to form. Okay, the feature race at Mugello was very lucky. He did, you know, I said at the start of the race, he's on the alternate strat. If the safety car comes out, if a safety car comes out even at the right time and he's just pitted, he's going to be laughing because he's going to be on the right tyre at the right time. So that did pay off for him very well, and obviously what also helped was that his 2 rivals didn't score in that first race, and only one of them, Callum Eilert, scored in the second. So that's what's aided to him leading the championship now. But at the same time, he's deservingly there. He's proven that he can be there. He's proven his consistency. He's proven his management of tyres. He's done really well. There's been a couple of races where he's really been managing the race from the front. And although he's only won 1 race this season, which was the feature race in Monza, he's still been very consistent and very good. And if he is managing the race from the front, he normally at least ends on the podium. So very strong driver, very consistent driver. Definitely 2 qualities that F1 teams are going to be looking for, because when you go to F1, it is also as much about you as it is about the team. So the team want consistent scorers. So I think he's ticking all the right boxes, and he's definitely shown me in the last few race weekends that he deserves a chance in Formula One. Here comes the slight issue I have. Obviously, Callum Eilert's very much doing very, very well. He's been a hot shot and a hot contender for the championship since the start of the season. He joined Schumacher in F2 last year. They both had their rookie seasons together in 2019. So they both have the same years of experience in Formula 2. They've both shown this year cracking under the pressure. I remind of, I think it was the sprint race, one of the sprint races at Silverstone. Eilert definitely had quicker pace than Dan Ticktum, but lost it under his own steam, spun the car and had to retire because he got himself caught out. Very rookie mistake, complete driver error, but it's F2, so you do kind of have to give them a little bit of leeway, because that's the ground in which they do it. They learn these things in F2, they attempt things in F2 that you wouldn't try in F1, because F2 is the learning ground, and that's the learning curve. And then when you get to F1, you're like, right, I shouldn't be making so many, if any, silly mistakes anymore, because I've already done that. I think both Schumacher and Eilert have shown consistency, shown speed, shown great race pace, shown great management of races, shown they're very good rounded drivers. Both normally do pretty well in qualifying as well. Usually they both start in the top 10 or 8. So they're showing good worth to Formula One teams, and obviously F2 is right under the eyes of all of the F1 team managers, so definitely is the place to do it. The thing that concerns me is the name Schumacher, because I know, or I believe F1 is so determined to get that surname back into Formula One. When Schumacher started progressing through single-seater, both Mercedes and Ferrari fought to get him on their young drivers program. Obviously Ferrari won because that's the young driver program he's part of. But both of them wanted him. Both of them wanted to be the team that brought Schumacher back to Formula One. And there's that story that F1 is chasing. And I think F1 is hoping that a story like that may detract from mass dominance at the front that we've had for nearly 7 years now. And that's what concerns me, because it then, I'm not saying that Schumacher wouldn't be good in a Formula One car, and I'm not saying that Schumacher doesn't deserve to be in that Formula One car, but I am saying the weighting is more on the story that they can tell with this all happening, rather than the most deserving driver getting it. Now, I hold my hands up, because if Schumacher does win the F2 championship, there's 6 races left to go, 2 in Sochi, and then I think both Bahrain rounds they're doing as well. And if Schumacher does win the F2 championship, absolutely put him up into very likely the Alfa Romeo seat, because he will deserve it. He will not be able to race again in F2 next year, because he will have one F2, and that's how it works. And that's kind of how you want to see the system work. You want to see the F2 champions go up into Formula One. Going back a few years, Stoffel Van Dorn won and came up. Jolyon Palmer won and came up. George Russell won and came up. I think the only F2 driver in the last 4 or 5 years that hasn't is Nick de Vries, who is last year's champion. So the pattern is working, the system is working, and that is how it should be. It should be the F2 champions progressing up into F1, because that is how the feeder series should work. Otherwise, what's the point in having the feeder series? And this is the bit where I come into a cause for concern, because in my opinion, if Ilott beats Schumacher in F2 by the end of the season, Ilott should get the seat, because he will be the deserving one, and he will be the one who won the championship, and he will be the one who can say, look, I am the best. I have proved I'm the best of all of this amazing talent that we have in F2 this year, so I deserve the seat. And my biggest fear is that Ilott wins and Schumacher still gets progressed. Twofold why this is a concern for me. Firstly, that's all in a name, because rightfully so, Ilott should get the seat. He is also Ferrari young driver. He's had more wins this season than Schumacher. You know, they're very, very close on points. They've had very, very similar seasons. But Ilott has shown his worth at the front, leading the grid, maybe a little bit more so than Schumacher has. So first point is it would all be in a name, and the only reason they would be doing it is chasing that story, like I was saying earlier, which is the biggest concern I have. Because I think there will be some naysayers who will be like, well, he only got promoted because of the name. And it would be very hard to argue that point against them. The second point is that there's nowhere for Ilott to go. If you win F2, you cannot race in F2 again. So he would end up very likely either in Super Formula, which is not connected to Formula One really, with the likelihood of him getting a seat very low after that, or he would potentially end up in Formula E, following Nick de Vries over there. He could end up in sports car, but I think if Ilott wins the championship this year and doesn't get promoted, I don't think he'll go into Formula One. And that is such a crying shame when we have drivers in Formula One who, to me personally, are not the best, are only there because they're paying to be there, and they're just seat warmers. There are 3 drivers I have in my mind. Maybe 4, but definitely 3 drivers I have in my mind. I'm not going to say it, but there are 3 drivers in my mind that you could take out and trade in for some of the cracking talent we have in F2. And suddenly, the driving and the fighting and the racing, because let's put it this way, next year's Mercedes as well, probably Hamilton's as well. So I'm not even worried about the championship or the fight at the front. No one's going to take it to them. Nothing changes next year. It doesn't happen next year. But the midfield is where the fighting is going to be, and you want drivers like Ilott, like Schumacher, like Schwartzman maybe. You know, personally, on a sidebar, Schwartzman I think probably should stay in F2 next year, because he's come straight from F3 and it would have been amazing to see him win F3, win F2, go to F1, but I think he needs a little bit more time to kind of learn, a little bit more racecraft. More for me is his mental approach to race weekends. It does seem like if he has a bad Saturday or a bad Friday qualifying, that's it. He won't do very well that weekend. I think he struggles to kind of put the bad days behind him. I might be wrong, I might be doing a very big disservice, but this is just my opinion, kind of looking into it from an outsider and not really knowing the lad at all. So I think he could do with a year, at least another year in F2, maybe a few more, but we'll see how he goes, because I would assume next year he's going to be racing at the front of F2, because he's shown he can do it now in his first year. I definitely think he'll carry that through. So yes, if Schumacher wins the F2 championship this year, he should be promoted up to Alfa Romeo, very likely partnering Kimi Räikkönen. But if he does not win the F2 championship, I don't think he should. I think that the Alfa Romeo seat, because it's very likely that F2 is going to be won by a Ferrari young driver. Ferrari have the ties to Alfa Romeo, and it's been very clearly stated that Alfa Romeo are looking to bring a Ferrari young driver into their seat for next season, or into one of their seats, sorry, for next season. So I believe that the top scoring Ferrari young driver should be the one to get that seat. Do I think if Ilott wins that he will actually get promoted up and Schumacher won't? Not at all. I think this is kind of a moot point, and I think sadly Schumacher's going up irrelevant. And I feel sorriest, if that's a word, for Callum Ilott, because like I said, I think if he wins the championship and he doesn't go up this season, I don't think we'll see him in F1, which is an absolutely diabolical crying shame. But there you have it. They are my thoughts on F2, on Mick Schumacher and his potential to going up to Formula 1. Let me know what you think, what your opinions are and thoughts on this topic down in the comment section down below, and I will definitely check them out because I absolutely love discussing this with you. Please let me know if you'd like to see Track Talk take on other race series, not just F1, and I'll happily bring you thoughts and opinions from across the motorsport world. But anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been an absolute blast as always. If you enjoyed this video, go show that like button some Formula 2 love. And if you want to support the channel, go hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss next time I upload a video. Stay awesome, and I will see you all in the next video! I hope they prove me wrong, but knowing Formula 1, they won't.